In the quiet village of Amioji, long before the sun rose over the red earth, a home was breaking apart. "Sandra, please, think of our children," Obinna cried, his voice raw with pain. Chidima and Chidibear were barely 4 months old, their tiny fists waving helplessly. Sandra stood with a heavy traveling bag slung over her shoulder, her once bright eyes now hard as laterite. "I am tired of suffering, Obinna," she said coldly. "You promised me a better life. Look at this place." She swept her hand toward the leaking roof, the cracked mud walls, the wilting cassava leaves in their small farm. "I want more than this." Without another word, she turned and walked down the dusty path that led to the city. She never looked back, not even when the babies began to wail. Obinna watched the woman he loved disappear into the morning mist, leaving him a broken man with 2 motherless infants. Years before that cruel dawn, Obinna and Sandra had been the pride of Umioji, young, deeply in love, and full of dreams. They married with the whole village dancing at their wedding. Obinna came from a long line of farmers. His hands were already calloused at 20 from wrestling life out of stubborn soil. Sandra, daughter of a small trader, had once spent a few months with her aunt in Arnicha and returned with stories of big houses, fine lace, and cars that did not run on prayers. Obinna believed hard work and love would be enough. He planted yam, cassava, and maize from dawn till dusk. When drought came, when weevils devoured the harvest, he prayed harder and dug deeper. After years of barrenness, God finally blessed them with twins Chidinma and Chidibear. The naming ceremony lasted 3 days. Palm wine flowed, and old women sang that the ancestors were pleased. But 2 extra mouths made hard times harder. Sandra grew restless. She hated wearing the same faded wrappers. One morning, after the last barn of yam rotted from weevil infestation, she packed her bag. "I cannot waste my life here," she told Obinna. "You and your bush farm can keep this poverty." Sandra once more. No amount of begging from Obinna, from the elders, from the pastor could change her mind. She left before the cock crowed. Life became a slow crucifixion for Obinna. The twins cried for milk he sometimes could not provide. He carried them to the farm tied to his back and chest with old cloths, hoe in one hand, hope in the other. When their first shoes wore out, he patched the soles with palm fronds. Chidinma would hug his leg after a long day and say, "Papa, don't be sad. When we grow big, we will buy you a big car." Chidinma would sing him the songs she made up. Obinna would laugh through tears and call them my angels. Every night he told them the same thing: "We will not hate your mother. We will work hard so that no one ever pities us again." 5 dry seasons later, a motorcycle roared into the village, raising red dust. A thin, weary woman climbed down, followed by 2 stern men in city clothes, carrying brown envelopes. The village children ran to spread the news. Sandra Don return. Obinna stood slowly, heart pounding. The twins, now 6 years old, peeked from behind the door, clutching each other. "Sandra," he whispered, "why have you come back?" She could not meet his eyes. "I need your help," she said, voice cracking. One of the men stepped forward. "My name is Barrister Arma. This is my colleague, Mr. Kalu. Your wife's sorry. The woman you married under customary law has serious debts in Lagos. Because you never formally divorced, creditors can come after you too." Obinna felt the ground tilt. After abandoning him and the children, she had the nerve to drag him into her mess. Sandra fell to her knees in the dust. "If you do not take me back as your wife, they will arrest me. I have nowhere else to go." Villagers gathered, murmuring. Some shook their heads in pity, others in anger. Obinna looked at his trembling daughters and said quietly, "I will give you my answer tomorrow." That night, he sat under a starless sky, turning the legal papers over in his calloused hands. Suddenly, he saw movement near the yam barn, a shadow, crouching low. Gripping his cutlass, he crept forward and shouted, "Who is there?" The figure jumped. Moonlight revealed Sandra's wild eyes and unkempt hair. She clutched a small sack and fell weeping at his feet. "I was hungry," she sobbed. "I only wanted a few yams." Obinna stared at the woman who once dreamed of city mansions, now reduced to stealing from the husband she deserted. Something inside him broke again, but softer this time, like a wound reopening gently. He sent the gathering villagers away, led her inside, and gave her the last of the gari and soup. The twins watched from the doorway, whispering, "Mama looks like a beggar." After she ate, Obinna asked the question that had burned in him for 5 years. "We had love here, Sandra. We had peace. Why was it not enough?" She wiped her mouth with a trembling hand. I thought fine clothes and plenty money would make me happy. Instead, I cleaned toilets for people who treated me like dirt. When I got sick, they threw me out. I have nothing, Obinna, nothing. Before he could answer, heavy knocks shook the door. 2 police officers stormed in, flashlights blinding. Are you Obinna Nwekwu? The senior one barked. Yes, sir. You and your wife must come with us. Now, at the station, chaos reigned. They found a thick envelope of cash in the small sack. Sandra carried money from a politician's fraud ring she had cleaned for. She swore she did not know it was hidden in her bag, but the officers were not listening. Hours later, as dawn broke, Inspector Baylor slid a confession form across the table. Sign this, he said coldly. Say you knew about the money. We release the woman, you take the charge alone. Refuse, and both of you stay in prison. Your children go to an orphanage. Obinna's world narrowed to the faces of his daughters, small, frightened, waiting at home. He picked up the pen. Just then the door burst open. A tall lawyer in a sharp suit strode in with 2 assistants. My name is Barrister Chuka Okafor, Federal High Court, he announced. This investigation is flawed. Release my client immediately. He dropped a thick file on the table. The real criminals have been arrested, and Mr. Obinna Nwekwu is about to become a very wealthy man. Everyone froze. Barrister Chuka explained. The politician Sandra worked for had buried fraud money on land that actually belonged to Obinna's late grandfather. The government had seized the property and was now compensating the rightful heir Obinna with millions of naira. Sandra's eyes lit up. She grabbed Obinna's hand. My husband. We can start again. Think of the children. Obinna gently pulled his hand away. He looked at her for a long moment, then turned to the officers. Am I free to go? They nodded, ashamed. He walked out into the rising sun. Chidinma and Chidibere ran to him, crying, Papa. He knelt and held them close, tears mixing with theirs. My angels, he whispered. Everything will be all right now. Weeks later, the leaking mud house stood empty. Obinna and his daughters moved into a beautiful white bungalow with glass windows and flowering plants in the yard. The twins attended the best private school in town. Obinna started a large commercial farm, employing villagers and paying them well. Sandra left Omioji in shame and was never heard from again. Years passed. Chidinma and Chidibere grew into brilliant young women, graduated as medical doctors, and returned often to run free clinics for the poor in their village. Some elders said the girls should forgive their mother, that blood is thicker than water, but the twins refused. She left us when we were 4 months old. Chidinma would say quietly. She only remembered us when she needed saving. Chidibere would add, and their father never disagreed. One golden evening, as the sun painted the hills orange, Obinna sat on his veranda, watching his grown daughters laugh and chase each other across the lawn like little girls again. He smiled a deep, peaceful smile that came from a heart finally healed. They had lost much, they had suffered much, but love, loyalty, and hard work had built them something greed could never destroy. Obinna's farm became the pride of the entire local government. He bought more land, sank boreholes for neighboring villages, and built a small processing mill where women turned cassava into gari and odorless fufu that sold as far away as Onitsha main market. People began to call him Mwamuoma, child of good spirit, because no one could explain how a man who had once patched his children's shoes with palm fronds now signed checks with the same hand. Chidinma and Chidibere, now in their late 20s, had finished their residency training at the teaching hospital in Inu. Chidinma specialized in pediatrics, Chidibere in obstetrics and gynecology. Every December they returned to Amuoji with a busload of doctors, nurses, and free drugs. The village square turned into a clinic for 1 week. Children got vaccines, pregnant women received safe delivery kits, and old men who had never seen the inside of a hospital smiled toothlessly when the doctor twins called them Papa or Mama. Yet there was one shadow that refused to leave the edge of their bright lives. Sandra. For nearly 20 years she had drifted marketwoman in ABA, cleaner in Abuja, cook in a beer parlor in Port Harcourt, always moving before anyone could ask too many questions. Time had not been kind. Malaria, hunger, and regret had carved deep lines into her face. Her once thick hair had thinned to grey wisps. She now lived in a face-me-I-face-you yard in Ajagunal, surviving on odd jobs and the little she could beg from church members. Then one night, in December 2029, the past finally caught up with her. She was sitting outside her room, trying to warm her hands over a small stove of charcoal, when a shiny white bus pulled up in the muddy street. Children ran after it, shouting, "Dr. Twins Dan, come!" Oh! Sandra's heart stopped. She watched from the shadows as Chidinma and Chidibear stepped down, taller and more beautiful than she could ever have imagined, greeting everyone in sweet, fluent Igbo. They had come to Lagos for a medical outreach in Ajegunle, before heading home to the village. That evening, as the team set up under a large canopy, Sandra stood at the back of the crowd. She wore an old Ankara headscarf pulled low over her face, clutching a hospital card like every other patient. When it was her turn, she shuffled forward and sat on the plastic chair in front of Chidi. The young doctor smiled, the professional smile she gave everyone. "Good evening, Mama. What is your complaint?" Sandra's hands shook as she pushed the scarf back. Chidibear froze. For a long moment, mother and daughter stared at each other, 25 years of silence hanging between them like a thick fog. "Mama," Chidibear whispered, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. Sandra's eyes filled instantly. "My child, my Chidibet." People began to notice. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Someone recognized her. "Nah, Sandra be this. Obinna wife way run that year." Chidibear stood slowly, her white coat suddenly feeling too heavy. She looked around for her sister. Chidinma was attending to a child 2 tables away. Unaware, Sandra fell to her knees right there in the dust. "Please, I just want to see your faces. I know I don't deserve anything. I heard you people day do free treatment. My body day pain me well. Chidibear's training took over. She helped her mother up, led her behind the canopy, and began a quiet examination. Blood pressure, temperature, questions asked in the calm voice she used with every patient. But her hands trembled. When Chidinma finally came looking, she saw the scene and understood immediately. The twins looked at each other across their mother's bent head. No words were needed. They had discussed this moment many times in the dark of their university hostel. What if she ever came back? What would we do? Now the moment was here. That night, in a small hotel room paid for by the outreach team, the 3 women sat together for the first time since the twins were 4 months old. Sandra spoke first, voice hoarse. "I know you hate me. I deserve it. I was foolish. I thought money would make me happy. Instead, I lost everything that ever mattered." She reached into her small bag and brought out 2 tiny, faded photographs, the only thing she had carried all these years. One was Obinna, on their wedding day, smiling wide. The other was the twins as newborns, wrapped together in a single blanket. "I look at these every night," she whispered. "Every single night." Chidinma's eyes were red. "You left us, Mama. Papa carried us to the farm on his back. He cried himself to sleep many nights. We needed you, and you were not there." "I know," Sandra said, tears streaming. "I know." Silence stretched long. Then Chidibear spoke, soft but firm. "We will treat you. You are sick here, blood pressure is high, your liver is not strong. We will give you medicine and make sure you eat well for some weeks. But after that," she paused, looked at her twin, then back at their mother. "After that, we cannot bring you home to Papa. That door closed the day you walked away. He has peace now. We will not break it." Sandra nodded slowly, as if she had expected nothing less. "I understand. I only wanted to see that you turned out well. That is enough for me." They kept her in Lagos for 1 month. The twins paid for a small room, bought her new clothes, fed her well, treated her hypertension and malaria. Every day they came after the outreach to sit with her, sometimes talking, sometimes silent. They never called her Mama again, but they called her by her name, Sandra-like, a patient they cared for deeply. On the last day, Chidinma pressed an envelope into her hand. "Inside is enough money to start a small provision shop anywhere you want. We will come, but do not come to Umioji. Papa must never see you again. That is our condition." Sandra took the envelope with shaking hands. "Thank you, my daughters. You have hearts bigger than mine ever was." "How was Lagos?" he asked, pulling them into his arms. Chidinma rested her head on his shoulder. "We saw someone from the past." Papa Obinna stiffened slightly, but said nothing. Chidibear took his hand. "We took care of her. She will not trouble you. We made sure of that." Obinna looked at his daughters for a long moment, eyes shining with pride and unshed tears. Then he nodded once. "That is enough," he said quietly. "Come, let us eat. The goats are already singing in the pot." That night, as the 3 of them sat under the stars eating pepper soup and laughing at old stories, The wind carried the scent of orange blossoms across the compound. Some wounds, they understood, never fully close. But scars can be strong enough to hold a life together.